All right. Well, first, like to thank you all for coming out to our film festival and supporting arts and culture in New York and seeing this wonderful film that Daniel put together. Daniel, I'd first like to talk about a little about subversive tactics, because this is very much a film where it's within the thriller horror genre, but very much a lot of the conventions of the genre have been subverted. And I'm sure that there was very strong ideas put together when you were developing the story for this.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Well, we wanted to sort of upend the teen horror flick idea. We wanted to do something where there's no sex, no drugs, no alcohol, just a big gulp. And by kind of imposing that rule on ourselves, that forced us to be really creative, and that was the intention from the get-go.
Okay. There's also this wonderful thematic storyline going through here, dealing with issues of alienation and isolation, very much bringing to the current state of what teens go through. And did this come from, also coming out of this idea of this abandoned trailer park and this notion of significance and insignificance, because you do have these lost objects where for teens who are destructive, they sort of have no significance, but for Malachi's character, they have tremendous significance.
Right.
And one of my favorite scenes is actually the description of the universe and our insignificance in it using a gumdrop. Quite memorable. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Karim said how long did it take to write that, but actually Will, the genius Will over there, he ad-libbed that whole scene.
Oh wow!
Yeah, the gumdrop scene was Will's creation.
So you have a very dark personality.
Me and him had been talking about it earlier, and he actually presented the idea of the whole universe and how insignificant we are, and I just kind of brought it to the attention of the movie for the movie's sake.
Was there a lot of improvisation in the film, or was that just happened to?
We went off script a lot of times. I mean, initially I actually wasn't going to even write a script, and Drew, my partner, said, "Write a script." So I wrote a script, and actually in the end, the edit is very close to the script. I mean, but we did go off, and we created some kind of some exercises for the cast to encourage the ad-lib scenes that several of those made it into the film. So we knew from the beginning that we wanted to sort of pull that out from them. And Karim actually had a lot of the ideas of integrating the sort of conflict scenes like the one we see between Haley and Will. But the beginning of your question about isolation, when I watch it now, I see a lot of myself. I grew up on a dirt road in the South, and I'm an artist, and a lot of what made me an artist was being isolated like that and being in the woods and really not being very integrated into other teen culture. So Malachi is almost like an alter ego in that sense, and I think it's even more relevant now because you see them sort of disaffected, interacting with their cell phones more than each other, and then you have Malachi who actually is isolated and he's craving the kind of interaction that they're not fully engaged in. So that was some of the layers of that.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the scene where Will is frantic over the lost cell phone. It almost is as if the cell phone was like a lost child that just had to be found, and Will was just playing this sort of frantic mother running out. Where's my? But I've seen that. I've seen, especially in New York. I actually did witness once a person get down on the subway tracks, risk their life for a phone. But when you do have, your friends, your contact list, your apps, it does become sort of like your life in a sense. It was a well put together scene, which was shot in the woods, and that brings me to Karim. I did wonder, a lot of it was shot natural light, right? What were the challenges, especially maybe like shooting around dusk, which is like such a short period of time to capture what you need to capture?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's so great that you like picked up on all that stuff and really got the film, and like all the things you're saying are the things that me and Daniel talked a lot about when we were cutting it and thinking about it. So that's really gratifying. But yeah, the shooting, like Daniel mentioned, I think we ended up having to shoot. I mean, the story itself was set a lot kind of in that dusk period, what a lot of times people call magic hour, kind of like right after sunset when the light is really beautiful. And it's kind of, that's right in the script, and it was obviously a limitation because we ended up having, we were kind of like, would wait around all day, and I'd be shooting like all those cutaways of the, you know, the weeds and stuff, and then it would be like, you know, almost sunset, and it'd be like, okay, we gotta go now, and get your shoes on that you need, and all this stuff. But it kind of added to the energy of those moments that you saw in the woods, and it was actually kind of, I don't know, it's kind of interesting, cool way to work because you become much more focused and you have to actually, I don't know, you kind of have only so much time to get what you need, and I think everyone kind of really gets on track and kind of plugs in together, and it's a nice collaborative energy that comes out of it.
Okay, thanks. Well, speaking of collaborative energy and cast, I'll turn my attention to you guys. My first very important question is to Jacob. What did that drink concoction taste like?
We weren't planning on making me drink it, but I kind of took a sip on my own.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was not fantastic, but yeah, most of the time we replaced it with another drink. So
Yeah.
It was actually the replacement drink was a green drink from Whole Foods, so totally safe and very nutritious.
then after drinking that for so long, I would have rather drank the first drink. So.
That's called a suicide soda. It's actually something very common in the South. When we were growing up, you would go and get a little of everything, and it was called a suicide soda. I want to say something about the casting, though, actually. I mean, one thing that, I mean, with the exception of Haley and Gilberto, who had a little bit of training in high school drama class, none of them are obviously professional. Jacob, Will, and Blaine had never done any kind of acting, nor had Lillian or Jack, the two older, mature cast members. And yeah, so I just think when I watch them, like, I can't believe that they just look so, I mean, they were really professional to work with, and then the results are just so nuanced, and it was just, it's amazing to see what you can do with people who don't have experience but have talent. So I think that was just a really gratifying thing to watch as well.
Yeah. Well, how did you guys enjoy your first time on the set? I know. Like, I've had both experiences. Some people told me that, oh, I want to do it forever and ever, and some people were like, oh my God, I had to wait like 3 hours for like 5 seconds on screen. So, you know, what were your reactions to shooting?
I'd say one of our biggest reactions was how many times we had to redo a scene. There was one scene, the pulling up in the truck. You can only imagine how many times that would take. Now, just imagine that and multiply it by 100, and that's about what we did. So
we did 36 takes of Haley catching up with the guys in the cornfield.
Oh, wow.
36 takes.
So you do your own stunts, that running through the cornfields.
Yeah. It was an experience. It was a great experience. I really enjoyed it. I assume everybody else did too.
We did.
Yeah.
Pass it down the mic to Haley and Gilberto.
Yeah, please.
I was going to say one of the most challenging parts is, you know, we had high school going on at the same time. And that's a, you know, challenge enough in itself. And then we were shooting a movie, and we were all taking 3 AP classes, and we had this really cool psychology teacher who would just let us pass on tests and stuff like that. His name was Mr. Cochran. I want to give him a shout out. Best psychology teacher ever. Yeah. So the school part was a challenge. What's really challenging is watching yourself. It's kind of awkward. We all had really odd haircuts. Me and Jacob were talking about it, and then we realized Will stayed the same. But he's got awesome hair, so it's all good.
What I want to ask Gilberto and Haley, since I found them in a drama class, and actually Gilberto's part was originally for a sort of inbred Children of the Corn kind of kid, And when he wanted to read for the part, I'm like, well, he doesn't really look the part, but okay. So, and then when I watched him read for the part, I was just blown away by how brooding he was, and he just had this kind of elegance about him. And that actually was the reason why I went back and rewrote his entire part, integrating in this whole layer of self-identity and all of that you see in the film. So I'm just curious how you guys felt coming from, high school play to doing something like this.
Well, it was really different from stage acting to camera acting, and I really enjoyed the experience. The weather, well, it was freezing outside, but I liked it. Redoing shots isn't really a problem. I'm very patient, and I think my high school, I did 3 years of theater arts class, and I think my 3 years really did help me. My theater arts teacher, she did go over some, on-camera acting, and what she said was pretty accurate. So but it was a very good experience. It was fun. I'm very blessed for being a part of this movie.
Haley? Haley's studying acting now in college, so.
Yeah, that's the weird thing is I got to college and everyone was just like, oh, well, I've been in 36 shows in my high school. And I was like, I was in a movie. But it was fantastic. I'm completely blown away. Every time I tell the story of how I got casted, people are just like, nuh-uh, you didn't know what?
Could you fill us in?
Oh, God. Sitting in theater arts class with Gilberto, we were working with our friend Ashlyn on a project. This guy walks in painter's jeans. He's got slick back hair. We're like, is he working on the lights?
The lights were flickering.
Yeah. And then our teacher, Mrs. Hubbard, sits us down, and she's just like, this is Daniel Peddle. He's making a movie. Listen to him. And he gave us, this story about a bunch of kids running around in a trailer park, and we knew that, our friends were in it, and it was just like, okay, well, this is cool. And the auditions were held at Betty and Larry Peddle's house, which is adorable because they have Shetland ponies out front. So I was like, yeah.
We auditioned a lot of people, but the moment I saw Haley, I knew she was going to get the role. I just was like, that's the one.
It was a sweater, wasn't it?
Did you have specific faces in mind when you were writing?
Well, I wanted a girl that could look realistic with these guys, like that she would actually be out there hanging out, and that's like a very specific type of girl that was gonna, young woman that would do that. It couldn't be too much of a girly girl type. So Haley was perfect. When I saw her, I was like, that's the one, no question about it. We don't even need to have her read. I know it's her, and it was her. So.
All right. Well, I want to open this up now to the audience. I'm sure you thought some great questions. So. Why don't you raise your hands I'm going to repeat the question, so just let me hear it, and yes.
Well, I was just sort of curious about, so we heard Haley and Gilberto, but how you cast the kids in the film, and then also, how long did it take to film if you were doing magic hour?
Okay, so the question is more about how the actors were cast and how long the film took, keeping in mind that most of it had to be shot during magic hour.
I'll take the casting part, and Karim can take the shooting part. But Jacob is my nephew, and basically the story is my mom and dad, they kept telling me about this location. They're like, Daniel, you're going to want to make a movie there. I was like, yeah. My mom's always telling me about movies I'm going to want to make somewhere. And then when they drove me out there, it was literally like, God said, you're going to make a movie here. And I knew I was going to make a movie there. And Jacob was with me, and he started skateboarding around the park. And just the moment I saw him doing it, I was like, oh, wow, that's just cool like that, And when we kept going out there for research, Jacob would bring his friends, and I thought, well, this is it. We don't have to look any further. And so that's how these three guys got cast. They're Jacob's two best friends. The farmer was cast at the Dixie Classic Fair. I wanted a real farmer, so I went and I saw him. He had those amazing blue eyes, and I was like, you're going to be in the movie. And he said, no. And I was like, no, you're going to be in the movie. And he's in the movie. And the most amazing part of the casting story is actually Lillian, Dora, in the film. we scouted for a long time trying to find a Southern woman with long gray hair, and that proved to be very difficult because in the South they kind of get it coiffed and everything. And then I was actually going home to write her out of the film because we couldn't find her, and stopped by a grocery store that I hadn't been in since I was probably 8 years old, and went to buy some batteries for some of the equipment, and that lady was in front of me at the checkout line. I start talking to her, and it turns out she's French, from Paris, and had been living in my hometown for 50 years. And because I work in fashion, I sort of regaled her with my stories of going to Paris, and that's how we connected. And then she ended up being in the film as Dora. So there was a lot of magic kind of involved. And as far as the shooting, how long it took, I'll let Karim take it.
Was it 20 days? 25. So yeah, it was actually, not all of it was magic hour, because you can notice that the story with Malachi Gilberto, when we cut to his story of his childhood and the guy who kind of adopted him, and a lot of that is during the day. So, but I guess it was 25 days of shooting, and so obviously a lot of that running in the woods we had to do on multiple days, and kind of wait for the right light, and then race around while the light waned down to nothing.
We stretched the magic hour into often 3 hours of magic hour.
Yeah, we pushed it to the limit.
Yeah, we pushed it.
Yes.
Yeah, I really was very interested in sort of the structure of how you put the story together, and I was wondering if you could say a little bit about your writing process and kind of how you constructed it.
Okay, so your question is about the narrative structure, which is definitely nonlinear, and your story creating process.
Well, my first 2 features are documentary films. So a lot of our goal was to document this location. And when we got the permission to shoot there, they basically said, yeah, you can shoot here. It's going to cost this amount of money, and we're going to take everything down by this date. So we had a locked-in deadline. That trailer park is now gone. There's only 2 trailers on the street. So because of that time crunch, we had to really go, into action really quickly. I basically went away for a month in between fashion stuff, and I just focused on writing, and I just spent a month writing it. And the nonlinear quality of it was actually in the script. I wanted people to sort of be dropped into the film, and for it not to make sense for a really long time, for the pieces to sort of fall together and sort of challenge you to, make sense of this film. And also, as you notice, there's very little dialogue, and it may look like that's something easy to do, but it's really, really difficult to make a film with that little dialogue. So that was also part of the way we figured out how it would all come together. But the final edit very much resembles the original script in terms of the non-linearity of it.
Yes, in the back. Okay. All right. So your question is his background with his 2 additional films and how they relate or do not relate, I guess, in terms of trajectory.
Well, I mean, to the audience, maybe they don't relate to, but for me, the process is very similar. And I mean, working with largely non-actors, we used a lot of documentary techniques to pull the narrative out of the film. And so everything that I learned on the first 2 films were crucial to making a narrative, which is in some ways much harder. And I think there's a certain amount of learning in documentaries. You learn how to, I call it collaborating with accident. You learn how to let yourself be open to what's going on around you and not totally trying to take control of everything. And that was definitely sort of, much to many people's chagrin on the shoot, that was our style of directing the film as well. So it looked probably a lot of times from the cast point of view that we weren't sure what we were doing, but that was actually part of the process, and that's something that definitely I discovered by working on documentary films. So there is some through line there.
Any next question?
Some,
Oh. Okay, so what the question is, was this history of the trailer park? How did this thing just sort of show up? Is this a common thing that happens in North Carolina? Trailer parks just go get abandoned, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not uncommon at all to find an abandoned trailer park. I mean, this one was particularly arresting and very cinematic. And the basically, we did do some propping, but we tried very much to keep to the way how we found it, and we basically figured out which trailers we were going to work with, and some of them had this kind of almost stage-like quality. They had been stripped of everything inside, which made for an interesting context to play out the narrative. And then some of them were like, the family got up from dinner and never came home. And I asked a lot of questions of why did this trailer park get abandoned, and I got a lot of different answers. But the thing that made this, I guess, the most sense is the current owner. He's a policeman, and he said that basically the trailer park got drug infested, and over time, people just moved away, and it just got beyond repair, essentially.
Any other questions? Yes. Okay, so you're asking. What compelled you to do a thriller over every other type of movie you could have done? All right, so yeah, why choose to do a thriller as opposed to a drama or a romance in an abandoned trailer park?
I mean, as soon as I got out there, and the wind started blowing, and we were hearing so many creaking doors and weird sounds. I just was like, this is a thriller. It just seemed kind of obvious to me that it would have to be a thriller. And I wanted to do something, a mystery essentially, and play with the genre, and that was just the perfect backdrop for it. So that's why.
Tied to that question, how did you find the farmhouse? Was that?
God, when I grew up in the South, where this is very near my hometown, it was, as you see it in the film, it's like a kind of uber rural backdrop. And now it's completely cluttered with strip malls and development, suburbs, big box stores. And so actually location scouting that house proved to be really, really difficult. This is fiction. We pieced it all together to make it look extremely rural, but in reality it's not as rural. And we saw, my mom and dad were in charge of that actually. We saw a lot of farmhouses before we picked this one, and one of the main reasons why we picked this one is it came fully furnished, so that made it really nice for the budget, and it was that's original furnishing to the property, so it was more real, which was something that I was drawn to.
Questions? Wow. Okay. Gentleman down here. Yes.
Actually, Ian Hatton, the sound designer, he's somewhere in the crowd. I can't see him from here, but he yeah, there he is back there. He was a mastermind at that. We had a definite plan of what we wanted to exaggerate and where, but a lot of the little sounds, the little noises that you hear, it's not really music exactly, but atmospheric. He did that, and he worked with he actually had a huge library of nat sound that we worked with as well. So with so little dialogue, that was very important to the film. But thanks to Ian too. And James Corrigan is here as well. He was one of the composers for the film.
Next question. Yes, middle.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
And then second of all,
So how many film festivals have you submitted to, and what was the budget for the film overall, which you may want to fudge?
Yeah. My publicist already told me don't talk about that. But I'll tell you this much: that I thought it was what's considered a low budget film, and then it got dropped down to what is considered micro budget. But then in the end, when I started applying to film festivals, I found out that actually it's considered no budget. So that's our budget. And yeah, we've applied to some. We're still waiting to hear from a lot of the festivals. I mean, the season is basically just starting now, so we're working on all of that.
Yes. Is okay, so is there going to be a Sunset Edge 2 and After Dark? And will this style of shooting continue?
I'll answer half of that, but I don't know about Sunset Edge 2, but I mean, we're currently editing another documentary, but I mean, I definitely want to do another narrative, and I really love this genre, so I would like to play around with it some more, and hopefully with maybe some more means to do it. And as far as the style of making the film, I mean, honestly, even though we had so many obstacles, I would say, to work around, if it were up to me, I think I would always choose to work this way. I loved working with the skeleton crew, just our sound guy, Karim, the production assistants. I really loved it. I loved not having any lights to deal with. I thought that was just like, for me, it was freeing. So I would like to do it again. I mean, you know, if the gatekeepers say, no, we won't green light that, then I'll go do it myself again. And if they say yes, then I'll try to strip it down to its, you know, minimum. But I think I want Kareem to answer that a little bit too, because a lot of the stylish approach is certainly his doing.
And what's the question? Are you going to do it again?
No, are you going to?
Am I going to do it again? Well, as you may know, because he's in a short film that I shot, that style, I mean, you know, I was just thinking about this, that style, the handheld style that the trailer park stuff is, that we shot that with, is really a function of just the level of the budget that we had and the kind of shoot. You know, it's much easier and in a sense cheaper because it takes much less time to just run and gun, as Daniel said. And so even though that was also, you know, that's also part of the story and part of how we kind of visualized it, but it's also very practical to do that, as you remember, Abia, when we were shooting in Brooklyn. So, you know, I was just actually thinking about this the other day. If it's similar to what Daniel said, if I had the chance, you know, because I also am a director, and if I had the chance to have to have a budget in a situation where I could do more in a different style, that could be great too. But handheld is just easier and easier to do when you have a limited, you know, situation in terms of money.
And it establishes intimacy with the filmmakers and the cast. And when you have a whole bunch of people hovering around, it's much harder to get that.
Another question? Yes.
My question is, people always say, like, write what you know. Was any of this autobiographical, first of all? And secondly, what was the first movie you saw that made you think, wow, I need to direct?
Okay. Okay, so the question is, write what you know, so how much of this movie ties into something in your life, and then beyond that, I'm sorry, what was the second half of your question?
The film that made me want.
Oh, the first film, right, the first film that made you want to.
Well, I mean, I'm from the rural South, so that's definitely there. And I mean, the Malachi character to me is almost like you're seeing why an artist becomes an artist that experiences that kind of isolation, and how his friends are the trees, his world is the woods. And so in that sense, it's very autobiographical. When I would come home from school, I would literally go into the woods and stay basically until sunset, you know, and that's how I spent my childhood. I have very fond memories of it. So it is autobiographical in that sense. In terms of the first film, I would have to say, embarrassingly, E.T. would be the one. E.T. was definitely, when I saw it, I was like, I'm going to do this. Yeah. So.
Any? Yes, one down here.
I mean, it's not the question because you talk about ET, so I don't know. This film to me is interesting because in a way I don't know. I'm staying with this sense of I don't know what happened. I have the sense of the unknown and the mystery. For me, it's more a dream, like a dream. I don't know if it was actually a dream. They were sleeping a lot in this film. In between dimensions, talking about universe, parallel universe, and also what is real, what is reality, and what is memory, and
You got it.
Okay, yeah.
You got all of it
Yeah,
right
so
there.
basically, right, so you're,
things, our objects are alive and carrying, carrying, yeah, the ghosts. But what are the ghosts? And also our inner ghosts and how. I mean, there is only one dialogue really between you and him about jealousy, in relationship. I mean, it's fascinating because there's no answer. It's like I'm left, but I have no idea what happened.
Neither do we.
I think it's a totally fair assessment, completely, and I mean, and not by default. It was by design to be that way. I mean, we talked about that a lot. That we wanted the film to have a kind of dream quality to it, and it is. Unfortunately, some people are disappointed by this, but it is supposed to be a dream that Jacob is having in the chair. He dreams this whole scenario, and then at the very end, we have Malachi reappear to sort of question the whole thing. Well, is it real or is it not real? And also, this ties into the notion of making documentary films, because I think there's lots of times where you might go, wait, is this a documentary film or is this, fiction? And that's something that I was definitely interested in. And as far as linking this back to E.T., I mean, there are some connections in the sense that I do children's books, and my first published book was wordless, and E.T. is, it's almost like a storybook in a way, and I wanted to capture that in the film. And I think Karim had an amazing idea with all the footage that's shot at the farmhouse with Malachi is actually on sticks, on a tripod, and very composed. There's no running and gunning. I mean, we perfectly composed every single thing in the shot in the way that you would illustrate a book almost. So there are some tie-ins there. But yeah, I love your read of the film. You got it. You didn't get it, but you got it.
other questions? Yes, in the back. Okay, so your question, all right, so you're asking about the intricately composed scenes, and then finally the scene with the old woman with the hair flowing that opens up the film.
The scenes as the cast reminded me, we shot the hell out of them. I mean, we would shoot one scene just over and over and over again. And I think because I come from a documentary world, I kept thinking in my mind, no, it doesn't look real yet. It doesn't look real yet. It doesn't look real. And then a couple days into the shoot, I would look at the dailies, and the first take would look amazing. I'm like, oh, well, it does look real, and we didn't have to do those other 29 takes, but I stuck with that plan, and we did that throughout. And as far as Dora, there's a lot behind her. She's sort of the maternal figure of the film. Pa being the paternal figure of the father, that's his actual grandfather in the film, but she's kind of based on a character in the Bible, Lilith, who she lived in the remains, and so she's kind of based on that. But she's meant to be the last tenant of Sunset Edge. She's the one that we're not sure if she still lives there. Is she a ghost? It's supposed to be purposefully unclear, but she is the one she witnessed Malachi's father murder and has collected all the clippings, and so she's led. Is that me? She's led Malachi to Sunset Edge, whereas his father had forbade him to go there.
We have time for one more question. Yes.
For the cast, so this is one of your first films, I'm assuming. Is this something that you want to continue doing?
So this will be your first fiction film.
For the cast.
Yeah, and it's something you want to continue doing.
Well, my interest has always lied with the casting and the directing behind it, and basically what my uncle does and everything. But yeah, for us three, this was our first film and everything, and yeah. So.
Do you want to do it again? Be honest.
If they came and asked me to do a Hollywood movie, I would say yes, right away. But yeah, I mean,
But no budget. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it was really an honor to be able to experience this and go through it with two of my best friends and two other lovely cast members. So yeah, but yeah, I would like to continue with this, but more through the casting and the directing rather than the acting part.
I mean, I feel like the experience that we had doing this is different than what I guess most actors have, because like you said, we're the first-time actors. I mean, it was definitely a challenge, but one worth having. As far as making a career out of it, it's possible. I mean, just like he said, if somebody came to me and offered me a big role in a Hollywood movie, I wouldn't think about it twice. I'm more interested, honestly, in the documentary side of things. I'm a big fan of Vice magazine, or rather, their unit that does the documentaries overseas and things like that, and they get into really dangerous journalism, and I kind of want to put myself in danger for the rest of my life, and get it on tape. So, yeah.
Honestly, like he said, it was an honor to work with the cast and crew. I honestly don't know. I don't know what direction I want to take my life in, whether it be in film or something else. But if given the opportunity to, I would most likely say yes again. It was a great experience. I had a lot of fun. I met a bunch of great new people. I'd probably have to do it again if given the chance.
I would definitely do it again. Like my girlfriend says, it's the world and then it's just me. I'm very strange in real life too. So artists do tend to be isolated a lot. The people that have like the creative minds are isolated a lot. Those are the minds that are like most valuable, I believe, because they create art, and like Daniel said, you do have to need to spend time in the woods, listen to yourself. And as far as acting, yes, I would definitely do it. It's so much fun. It's so thrilling. It's a rush, like just all the time. Every time Daniel would be like, all right, guys, on set, it's such a rush. It was awesome.
Yeah, I personally love acting because I think that as humans we have this need to understand each other, and when you get to take time to crawl inside of someone else and just be them for a while, that's showing some of the most poignant stuff in the world, something that can't be captured any other way. Also, I really like the free catering on set. So.
Service. Okay, well, I'd like to again thank Daniel and Karim and the cast. Put together a wonderful film, and we're very fortunate to be able to show it at our festival.